Hi, I'm Olivia Patchell. I'm the Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent for Currituck and Camden counties. And today we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions, as well as a spicy peanut and sweet potato and kale soup. Before we get started, just a few reminders. If you need the recipe, we'll put that in the comments section or in the chat box, depending on where you're viewing. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channels, we have the Currituck and the Camden YouTube channel available today for live streaming, so you guys can subscribe there. And follow us on Facebook. If you're joining us live on Facebook, you have any questions about the recipe or New Year's goals, please put those in the chat or in the comment section, and we'll try to answer those as we can. You may hear a little bit of information or a little bit of background noise as our pot is heating up. So we are getting our pot to pressure right now. We only have 3 minutes of pressure, so hopefully we'll get to open this up pretty soon and show you what's inside. Before we get into the recipe though, let's just talk about New Year's goals. I like to say New Year's goals instead of resolutions, just because when people typically set up resolutions, they're often failing at those resolutions before the end of January. So talking about goals kind of sets us up for success. And when you think about goal setting, you want to think about SMART goals, so specific, measurable, obtainable, realistic, and timely. And then you also want to think about the small tasks that can help you reach that goal. So that's a great way to get started with your New Year's goals. We're going to help you eat a little healthier here at the Extension office by showing you a recipe of some things you can get readily available at the grocery store. I'll talk a little bit about substitutions. I did make some alterations to the recipe, as I think recipes are just a guide, and you can add and take and remove things that don't suit your taste, and hopefully you can make a good, delicious meal for you and your family. This particular recipe is one that I utilize in my make ahead or freezer meals. It's great for the Instant Pot. You do have to keep a few things on hand when you want to do this recipe. So everything that's in the Instant Pot would go into a container, and then you could freeze it. So when you're freezing meals to go in the Instant Pot, I recommend freezing them in a circular container so that they can fit in the pot. And then you do not have to thaw meals that go in the Instant Pot or in the electric pressure cooker, because while your meal is heating up, coming to pressure like ours is now, you will thaw that meal. You do have to add liquid. Our liquid today is water and a little bit of coconut milk. We also utilize the juice from our fire roasted tomatoes. So let's talk about what is in the pot and what we did in what order. So we started out with a little bit of olive oil and put our pot on saute. While our pot is on saute, we sauteed onions. Now, if you want to use garlic, you can saute your garlic now, or I use this garlic and chili sauce, so I didn't add extra garlic. If you like a lot of garlic, go ahead, add it now, saute the two. You want to just get the onions to be translucent, and then bring out the flavors of the garlic. Once you get that done, you will add your sweet potatoes. So I added my sweet potatoes and I let them cook for a few minutes just to bring out the flavor, kind of brown them a little bit. So that's kind of getting your aromatics ready and releasing that flavor. You can also roast the sweet potatoes a little bit before you put them in this recipe. That's really good. We've done that at home, but that would take away from the make ahead part, because you would have to keep those out. So that's up to you. And then we add our coconut milk. We added our fire roasted tomatoes that were diced. So my recommendation is to look at your grocery store. You'll see a fire roasted like whole shelf, and you can see different spices. You could add those in. You could add the fire roasted tomatoes in the the liquid, you could have them in water. You can have them in the form of salsa as well, if that's something that you'd like. I love to keep those fire roasted tomatoes. They're in a can on the shelf for us to utilize in a lot of our other recipes. And it gives that nice kind of burnt flavor that you're giving to the other things that you put in here. We've kind of already released that that flavor. And then I added actually this chili and garlic sauce. You can add a jalapeno if you'd rather for your spice. And then additionally, we have salt and curry. So I did add a little more curry than the recipe calls for because that's something that I kind of enjoy. You can add that jalapeno. When I went to the grocery store, there were no jalapenos. So I went ahead and added the chili sauce for our spice. You'll hold aside peanut butter and peanuts and kale. So these things you'll need to have on hand if you're doing this as a make-ahead meal. Often you'll have these items here. It'll just be a matter of keeping the kale. Kale stays really good in the refrigerator for several days. Make sure you take it out of the plastic bag because that's going to hold moisture against it. And then put it in a container. I don't recommend de-stemming it until you're ready. But we go ahead and de-stem and chop up the kale. I actually just kind of tore up the kale for this recipe. And you just kind of do it to your taste. I've added spinach as well. So that's another option if you have a bag of spinach lying around that you'd like to use. I don't know why our pressure cooker is not coming up to pressure. It's not really sealing. Okay, solve that problem. The vent thing was not on all the way. So we are sealing now and we are starting our pressure. So we'll talk a little bit more about New Year's resolutions before we open back up our pot. So we put this in the pressure canner for the pressure cooker for 3 minutes. You do know that it will take some time to come up to pressure. If you are not comfortable with an electric pressure cooker like this one, I recommend that you try something else. You can use a Dutch oven on the stove. You can also put this in the crock pot. Often crock pot and electric pressure cooker recipes are interchangeable. So this one would be 4 to 6 hours on low. Doesn't take very long. The goal here is that we get the potatoes to soften and that we really get that nice soup thick texture. So we're just kind of cooking off some of that liquid. Okay, so this is going to take a little bit longer than I had anticipated. So we'll keep talking about goals. And one of your goals might be to try a new kitchen appliance. So I'm recommending that you try something that maybe you're afraid of, maybe that you don't enjoy, maybe that is kind of popular. This electric pressure cooker here is super popular and it's super easy. If you do the make-ahead meals, you can make the meals ahead of time, and then you can put them in here. And what I like to do is put them in as soon as I get home, and then I can go change my clothes, and then dinner is cooking. This recipe is great over rice as well. Just something you could add. And there's several variations of this recipe that you can utilize. So if your New Year's resolution is to cook more at home, maybe utilizing an appliance that is going to cut down on your time spent in the kitchen. And that is perfectly fine. Convenient stuff is great. A lot of people don't enjoy having several different appliances, and that's fine. You don't have to try a new appliance. But do remember, if it's going to get you to cook more meals at home, like, it might be worth keeping it in the cabinet or having it. Now, I got rid of my crock pot because this serves as a crock pot as well. So if you're trying to cut stuff back, maybe you could do that. So if that's your goal, is to cook more meals at home, go ahead and set a SMART goal. So you're going to cook, 3 or 4 meals a night, or maybe you're only going to go out 1 or 3 or 4 meals a week. Maybe it's that you're only going to go out 1 meal a week or 2 meals a week. In my family, it was always, we went out on Friday nights or Saturday nights, depending on, kind of what we were doing. And that was our eat out night. And then another easy way to kind of meal plan or meal prep is to look at the days of the week, look at your calendar, see what's going on, and know when those times you might need something like a make-ahead meal or a pre-made meal like a lasagna a frozen lasagna, or a soup that you can just pour in a pot and heat up. So those things will kind of help you plan your meals. Other people love the meatless Mondays, the salmon Saturdays, or the fish Fridays, or something that kind of goes along with that kind of the cute matchy, where you're matching up the days of the week with the food. And that works for people too. I have a menu in our kitchen where we just write down what we're going to eat, and then I go ahead and put in our grocery order for the things that we don't have that go with that. That also has cut down on our grocery bill. So that's something you could try. So New Year's resolutions, a lot of people think of like weight loss or maybe being more active, but you can even do something like being a better cook. You can try something new. So those are all aspects of cooking or all aspects of goals that you can utilize for your New Year's goal. So our pot is talking to us and it is done. So it's 3 minutes and then it's a quick release. A quick release means that you're going to turn this knob. So when I turn the knob and release the steam, you are probably not going to hear me too much, but I'm going to let you go ahead and check it out. I recommend stepping back from the pot when you're releasing the steam. Make sure you don't release the steam up into light bulbs in your kitchen, and that you allow the pressure to fully release before you try to open the pot. The safety mechanisms on pressure cookers in general, whether they're electric or not, is a lock. As long as there is some level of pressure, that lock will be engaged. When the lock releases, is when you can open the pot. You'll want to open the pot away from your face so that you don't steam your face. And as you let the pressure release, you'll notice that the visible steam is going away. But that doesn't mean it's done. So practice some patience here and let it completely release. Different recipes call for different types of release. There is this natural release, and that means you let the pressure dissipate on its own. So you would just turn the pressure cooker or instant or electric pressure cooker off and let that pressure release on its own. So kind of cooling down by itself. Another way is a 10-minute cool down and then a release. So you let it cool down on the keep warm setting for this one for 10 minutes, and then you would release the pressure. Or the quick release, which is just releasing the pressure once it dings that the time has come. Those times are all part of the cooking times in the recipe. So please follow what works, whatever is in the recipe that you're utilizing. If you're cooking meat on its own, vegetables on their own in an electric pressure cooker, I would recommend making sure that you check the manufacturer's guidelines for cooking those items. They will have times as well as pressure release information in the manuals, and that's a great source for that information. Of course, you can always find some information about that online, and I always recommend that when you're cooking meat, whether in a pressure cooker, on the stove, on the grill, that we do check the temperature and make sure that we're getting it up to the appropriate temperature for the appropriate cut of meat. One of my favorite things to do is cook any type of root or hard vegetable in the electric pressure cooker because it takes no time for them to soften and be ready to eat. So our lock has disengaged. No more steam is coming out of our valve. We can gently twist the lid. And the lid is supposed to hook into the side of your pot for this model, not every model. Otherwise, just be cognizant of the fact that you will have condensation and will drip. Now you can look down into my pot here and see the sweet potatoes. You can see the tomatoes, and you cannot smell it, but it smells really good. I smell the curry powder as well as the coconut. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some peanut butter. This is just whatever you have on hand. If you cannot add peanut butter, or if that's not something that you enjoy, of course you can add almond butter. I have added tahini to this recipe before, but you would use a smaller quantity. And we're just going to, while it's still warm, move that peanut butter around in there. That's going to help break it up and allow it to incorporate into the recipe. The sweet potatoes are really soft, and they'll start to kind of mush up as you stir in your peanut butter, and that's perfectly fine. That's how you would like a soup. And you'll notice here that this is a nice liquid with the chunks of your vegetables. If that's not something that you like, for this recipe, I wouldn't typically do it, but you can always puree this with an immersion blender or put it into the blender if you'd rather have a smoother consistency, or if you need a little bit more meat to your soup. We are going to add kale. So we're going to add our kale next and allow it to kind of wilt a little bit. Kale is really tough, so you should make sure that you add it with enough time to wilt. So you want to add it while it's hot, and that will allow you to have a better flavor. The same with spinach. You want to go ahead and add it while the recipe is hot, while it's still kind of cooking in your pot, so that it wilts a little bit. I, after adding the kale, may add a little bit more water. So in this recipe, in the Instant Pot, I cut down 1 cup of water because it was called for 2. And because I put in the coconut milk, and I just wanted to make sure and see how thick it was going to turn out. So I could add a little bit more water in here if I need to, but I think it's actually really good looking. And so we just want to make sure that the kale gets this bright green. I'm not sure if you can actually see how bright the green is, but it turned that nice, like cooked kale green. So this is now ready to be plated. So I'm going to show you guys just the simple plating that we're going to do here. Whatever bowl you'd like. Again, you can add, we love to add rice on the bottom of this, but it's plenty hearty without the rice. You can see here, it could actually add a little bit more water because it is pretty thick. Ooh, dumped it out. And then we'll just top it with some peanuts and we're ready to go. So this recipe has several vegetables in it. We have our kale, we have our tomatoes, and we have our sweet potatoes. So this is a great way if you're looking to add more vegetables into your diet, as maybe a New Year's goal. This is a great way to add more vegetables into your diet. And again, you can use this as a make-ahead meal or a freezer meal. Just a little plug, at the end of the month on January 20th, I will be doing a make-ahead meals class. And this class will be held in person here at the Extension office. We are offering registration on a first-come, first-served basis. We're only offering it to 10 people. But if you'll check our website, and that's currituckces.ncsu.edu, you can find out the information on how to register, and we will be doing similar recipes to this one here, and you'll be able to get that information to take home and add to your favorite recipes. I will allow for some small tastes so that you guys can make sure that this is something that you and your family will like, because I miss feeding everyone. All right, well, I'm so glad you guys have joined us. I hope that you are working hard to set up some New Year's goals for 2022. And now that the weather has turned, it's time for some soup. So I hope you will enjoy this recipe. Again, the recipe is in the comments. And of course, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. My email address can be found on our website, as I stated before, or it is Olivia_Patchell@ncsu.edu. And I'm so glad that you have joined us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.